You're picking the Colts. I'm picking the Texans. And I'm going to tell you why. Because in our preseason preview, I picked the Texans. They have a better record than the Colts. So I feel like I have to make this pick. Andrew Luck has played out of his mind. What a fantastic performance last week against Cleveland. He has to be in the conversation for top 3 quarterbacks right now with Rodgers, Peyton, and Luck. I'm not going to put those in any kind of order. Those are the top 3 in my eyes. I want Houston to win this game really, really bad, so I don't look like an idiot too bad. That's all. That's my only reasoning to making this pick.
Well, I mean, you could do better than that. I mean, the Texans do have a good defense, but the Colts at home seem to be, for the most part, unbeatable. They just play at a different level in front of their hometown fans, and you know, you could say, well, that's typical of a home team, but that's not true. I mean, you could look at the Bears and say, well, they're playing awful at home.
Right.
And Andrew Luck, he's doing exactly what he needs to do to win football games, just like this past weekend against the Browns. And whatever it is that he's going to have to do to beat the Texans, I think he'll do it. You
want to talk about a player that just absolutely rode momentum last week? You know, because Cleveland stymied him pretty good early on. They had his number pretty good, and he figured it out in a hurry in the fourth quarter when he needed to. And T.Y. Hilton had some huge plays in the second half there. So he's playing lights out ball. You can't really complain. Some games that were pretty tough to pick. You had mentioned that you were struggling with the Oakland-Kansas City game. Oakland's a nice story. I don't see Kansas City losing this game at home.
Yeah, I think that's the bottom line point. I mean, and the other thing, and it actually was something I meant to point out in the previous segment, the other thing is these two teams have played already once. And generally speaking, when you play once, you've learned something about the other team. And in the second game, and this is just my opinion, tends to be harder fought. The score tends to be lower because you figure some things out. And because of that, I think that the Chiefs, they're going to be at home. They're going to be in front of their hometown crowd, who I think they play well in front of as well. And they're going to figure out certain things about the Raiders, and they're going to implement those things and beat them at home. One game that happened last week, which that didn't happen in, which makes it the more impressive that the team won the game and won it handily, was the Panthers and Saints. The last time they played earlier in the season, and they played in Carolina, the Saints just handed it to the Panthers. It was one of Cam Newton's worst games of the season. Mm-hmm. So to see them go to New Orleans on the Saints' home field and beat them the way they did was absolutely amazing. Just amazing. Yeah. So, you know, the reverse here. I think this is what should happen. It should be the natural transgression. The Chiefs should beat the Raiders. But hey, if somewhere in my heart I'm rooting a little bit for the Raiders just because of what a poor season they've had, forgive me.
Forgive me.
No, you know what I mean. Chiefs fans would certainly not appreciate that. They want to win this game. They want to stay in the hunt themselves.
You know, another game that was kind of tempting for me to just take a wild stab at was the Cincinnati-Cleveland game. I don't think Cleveland's going to lose this game. We both picked Cleveland to win this game. But Cincinnati is one of those teams that they can turn it on. They don't know where the switch is. I think that they walk into a dark room, trip over a box on the floor, stumble, fall, and hit the switch, and magically it's on. So they're a team that could very well go into Cleveland and end up winning this game. But if they do, Andy Dalton has to pretty much play a flawless game at quarterback. I don't see Cincinnati being able to run the ball all that well, so it's ultimately going to come down on his shoulders, and I don't think he's that kind of quarterback.
I agree with you.
He's not the best color man in the country.
No, look, at the end of the day, I'm picking Cleveland because of their defense, and I think they will find a way to make their offense work next week against the Bengals, just like the Steelers found a way to make their offense work against the Bengals. But the one thing that we can't account for is sort of the roller coaster approach that the Bengals have taken to their season. We saw them start off strong, and then we saw their defense implode and not play very well, and suddenly they're losing games. They look like they're an afterthought in the whole discussion of the playoffs. But then they start winning games again, and they start winning games that we don't expect them to win. But then here, the Steelers march into Cincinnati and beat them handily. Mm-hmm. It was as if their defense didn't even show up. So what are we going to see when they go to play the Browns, who right now, despite whatever problems they're having trying to pick out who their starting quarterback is, which they probably know who it's going to be, the reality is that the Cleveland Browns and their fan base will show up on Sunday to play football.
Yeah, it's... I'm trying to think of a situation where Cincinnati went into hostile territory and came out victorious, and I can't think off the top of my head. I should just click on their team profile and just look at their schedule, so I can see if anything jogs my memory. But they're not the kind of team that I think answers the bell very well. The opening week they won at Baltimore. They went to New England and got blown out 43-17. They went to Indianapolis, got shut out 27-0. Then they went to New Orleans and they won 27-10. They went to Houston and won 22-13. And they went to Tampa. There's nothing hostile about Tampa. And now they're away at Cleveland. They're home against Denver. And then they're at Pittsburgh for Week 17.
That's a tough schedule to finish out their season.
That's horrific.
Yeah.
But if there's one game that they can win, that they on paper can win, it's this game.
Yeah, it's this game. Phew. I really like how some of the schedules have been worked out for a few of these teams.
It's created drama.
Yeah, I mean, the NFC West, to have three of your three last games against your division rivals in a division that's, I want to say that the Rams are 6-7. So even though you may say, well, they're probably not going to make the playoffs,
yeah.
What if they went out and finished 9-7?
They're 6-7. They play home against Arizona this week. Then they're home against the Giants, and then Week 17 they're at Seattle.
What if they went out? Yeah. Just think of that scenario: 9-7.
You hear Rams at Seattle, and you automatically disregard it as a loss. But Week 17, Seattle may not have anything to play for.
They may not.
You may get a bunch of scrubs in the second half there.
They may not.
Unless, because it's the Rams and a division foe, they're just going to make sure that they're not successful. Which, personally, I kind of like that angle. But that's just me.
Yeah. But here, I mean, when you consider the fact that the St. Louis Rams are 6-7 right now, that's pretty impressive considering all the diversity that they've faced this season. Everything from Sam Bradford to Chris Long. I mean, pick something to their running back carousel until they finally have now figured out that Trey Mason should be their running back, to their wide receivers.
And I don't think I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I don't think anybody should make light of the fact that they just pitched back-to-back shutouts. That in the NFL today, with the premium on offense and how hard it is to play defense, it's not that hard, or shouldn't be that hard anyway, for an NFL team to score. So when you go 8 quarters without giving up a point, not even a field goal, I know Oakland and Washington aren't exactly lighting it up on offense, but to not even give up a field goal the entire game, 2 games in a row, that's some like I said before in the last segment, man's football right there. Just get up and just punch people in the mouth.
You just cracked me up. Man's football.
That's man's football right there.
Man's football.
That game is for men right there.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure is, isn't it? Jeez.
Another interesting matchup is Miami versus New England. And I personally think that the Patriots are going to trounce the Dolphins. But we have to remember that the Dolphins trounced the Patriots Week 1. So this game has very big repercussions from everything from playoff implications to division rivalry to mindset. The Patriots have a 3-game lead, so they win this game, they clinch. But let's say that for some reason they lose the next 3 games and Miami wins the next 3 games. Then this game becomes really critical as far as a tiebreaker because they would finish with the same record. Miami's schedule, they're at New England, they're home against Minnesota, and they're home against the Jets.
Wow.
So there's an opportunity for the Dolphins if they win this game. But then you're also counting on the Patriots to have to lose all 3 of their games, and they are home against the Dolphins, at the Jets, and then home against the Bills. The Patriots have 3 straight division games to end the season. I think that's fantastic scheduling.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Going back to what you said, your last point.
Yeah. Here's the reality, though. I just don't see that happening. I mean, I think the Patriots finish out 3-0 in these last 3 games.
Yeah, they can win this game pretty easily. They can go into New York and beat the Jets, and home against Buffalo. If it was on the road, I would question it, but they went into Buffalo and beat them by 15. So I don't think there's anything about Buffalo that scares the Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, they're just riding way too high. And here, I'll tell you, I was impressed by the Bills shutting down Peyton Manning. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could say that the offensive plan just went, let's just run on these guys. But they're a great defensive team against the pass and the rush. And, I mean, I give a lot of credit to C.J. Anderson, a lot of credit to Juwan Thompson, to the extent that, they could move the football down through Manning. I mean, that was impressive and important, but he didn't score 1 touchdown. Not 1. I mean, that should be one of the biggest stories, even though they lost. Manning TD-less.
Yep. All right, seriously. 14 of 20 for 173 yards. That's not Peyton Manning stats.
No, those are... Who were we talking about earlier that had stats?
That's Kyle Orton stats is what those are.
Oh, come on. Give Kyle a break, though. I mean, he
actually
had a pretty good game.
He threw the ball 57 times. You should be able to throw for 355 yards when you throw the ball 57 times.
That's right. And he had 2 scores, 1 through the air and 1 on the ground. What were we talking about, like right at the beginning of the show?
Hoyer?
Yeah, it was Hoyer. I mean, those are Brian Hoyer numbers.
Yeah. More than Kyle Orton numbers, those are Brian Hoyer numbers.
Brian Hoyer numbers, yeah. So, I mean, you got to tip your hat to the Bills. They showed out there, and they balled in Denver.
Yeah.
They didn't even do that at home.
Well,
I like the Bills. I like them a lot.
C.J. Anderson scored 3 touchdowns, so he had the fantasy impact that way, but he only averaged 2.8 yards per carry.
Yeah, it's ridiculously bad, but when you score 3 touchdowns, really, who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Points are points.
It's like Matt Asiata. People talk about him, just plodding along under 3 yards, whatever his averages are. But when he has those games where he just scores 3 touchdowns, you wish you could get that every single week from him.
I'd take touchdowns over yards any day.
Any day.
And twice on Sunday. See what I did there?
I did. Wow, that was really clever.
It was the first time. Oh, wait, hold on. I got that too.
Yeah. Oh my God! Now the train has left the track.
It was never really there to begin with.
It was never really. You know what game I want to talk about briefly? The Jets versus the Titans.
Why?
And here's why. Only for this one reason. I'm predicting that the Jets actually look like a team after that game.
Because the Titans can make anybody look good? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, you could read this all in the waiver wire report, and more than that, but there are just several things going in their favor in this game, and the 2 biggies are lack of wide receivers for the Titans. That's number 1. And number 2 is Jake Locker.
Yeah. All valid points.
Yeah.
So, thank you guys for joining us. We'll be back here next week. Hopefully Mr. Taylor will be able to make it, but I don't believe so. 87 Sports Fans Live is on the air every Monday night, 10 p.m. to midnight. The next show on the schedule here at Late Night Sports Radio is the Fantasy Greek starts and sits in 60 minutes. All your playoff fantasy football advice Wednesday night, 10 p.m. to midnight. For Jim Saranteas at the Fantasy Greek on Twitter, I'm Keith Grieve. Have a good week, folks.
Post-game show is